Welcome to Connection Artist, the podcast for building better relationships by design. Love and human connection are fundamental needs for all of us, but how do we cultivate lasting, emotionally healthy, fulfilling relationships with ourselves and others? I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in meeting everyday people with diverse backgrounds and ages who all have one thing in common: a genuine passion for fostering meaningful connections. You'll hear their heartwarming stories and practical advice for building lasting marriages, lifelong friendships, and self-love. In this season 1, we sit down with 10 couples, learn how they met, and hear the secrets behind how they've built lasting marriages. Their insights will inspire and enlighten you. I also interview guests who found and maintained warm, lasting friendships for decades, and they're sharing how they did it. And lastly, we can't forget the importance of growing a loving relationship with ourselves, so we discuss building self-love and confidence. I've brought together a fantastic lineup of guests for you to meet who will share their unique stories and invaluable communication and relationship advice. Together, we're learning the secrets to building more meaningful, fulfilling relationships, one conversation at a time. I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in becoming a connection artist. So welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Marybeth and Bill joining us. I am so excited for them to share their story. They're just a fascinating couple that I've gotten a chance to begin getting to know, and I wanted to share what their love journey has been like with you too, as well as their advice for building a lasting, healthy, loving relationship that's lasted over 50 years. So with that, I'm going to ask you, Marybeth, and Bill, chime in. Tell us a story of how you met, and how long have you been together again exactly?
55 years. It'll be this August, 55 years.
Wow, congratulations.
And I had two best friends who were married at UCLA days when I was still in college.
Uh-huh.
And my best friend, who I worked with at the UCLA library, her whole family knew me, and her brother said, "I have someone I want you to meet. Would you mind me setting you up?" And
yeah, so here was the funny thing. I wasn't interested. I had no interest in dating, and if it started to get serious, then let's go on to something else. And anyhow, her friend's brother used to throw a New Year's Eve party every year. He starts out with this, "Have I got a girl for you?" That was New Year's Day of 1969. And then there was a kind of a long gap. And Marybeth, you want to take it?
And then in May, I was at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd been trying to get us together, and finally I said, yeah, okay. So
5 months later, still,
yeah,
you haven't gotten together.
They've been trying.
Okay. These friends of yours, they're good friends.
Yeah, best friends.
Yeah.
I had a boyfriend, and I had a boyfriend for 3 years throughout UCLA.
And they were ignoring that fact.
Nobody liked him.
Okay.
Because he was always going out with all these girls, and they kept saying, "Wake up, Marybeth," And even a professor at UCLA who knew both of us, my boyfriend and I, had us do some kind of a get-together type conference because he said that we were so opposite. And then he came out with a diagnosis that I was masochistic and he was sadistic.
Okay.
And he didn't think we should be dating each other.
And what kind
anymore.
of a professor was this guy?
Human relations or something.
Okay.
It was psychology, wasn't it?
Yeah. Anyway.
But he didn't see this.
Yeah, he didn't think it was
ending
good.
well.
So anyhow, my boyfriend David, who all my friends know, came over one Sunday to for breakfast. And I made him breakfast. He says, "Well, gotta go. Going sailing at the Marina del Rey with this girl." And I was so livid. And that's when this person called again and said, "How about going with us to
Is Busch Gardens?
Busch Gardens in the San Fernando Valley?" It was there then.
Okay, wow.
Kind of a strange first date, but fun.
And because we have a guy we want you to meet. I go, "Well, yeah, now I will."
Wait, so hold on. The other guy that you were dating was like, "I have plans with another girl."
Yeah, sailing.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Just that would
After
be
I made him breakfast.
okay, that would be a nice date for his girlfriend.
Yeah. So I was pretty upset.
Okay, yeah. So now you're like, I feel like I'm
Okay.
done with this.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we were on again, off again, because he was all over the place.
Yeah.
And he was Jewish, which I was fine with, you know,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And so anyhow, when this came up, I said, yeah, I'll go. Well, we had a wonderful time.
So it's a group date, it sounds like.
Yes,
Busch
the
Gardens.
four of us.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was no pressure, just
We just
four
had
people
fun.
out having fun. You know?
So
Okay.
Bill asked, did you call me afterwards, or did you just ask me if you could, or if you could come to UCLA and see me? Oh, and I worked with my friend at the UCLA library, and I said, well, yeah, why don't you come on up to the library? And he got there, and I, started talking to him, and 15 minutes later, I said, well, my break's over, see ya. And Bill's like,
It almost
"What?"
ended right there.
You must have called me and asked me to come to your place for dinner and to a Judy Collins concert.
Okay.
And I said, sure. And so I came over to his place, and he'd made dinner. You had fondue, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then we went to the Judy Collins concert, and we came back, and we talked. And we both said at the same time, God, we have so much fun together. Let's get married.
Really?
Just like that.
Jokingly or kind of seriously?
Seriously.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, because I think...
So you guys both became a little nuts at the same time?
Yeah, I felt so comfortable with her, which I hadn't. I mean, because it just started out as no pressure, and so it just kind of melded into that.
And our backgrounds were so different. I was raised Catholic, which I've since found out I'm quarter Jewish, which is fabulous.
Okay.
And
My family wasn't in favor of either.
23andMe, right?
Oh, yeah. And then you, Bill, was your religious background?
No. My grandparents were Christian Zionists, and my dad and mom got divorced after he came back from the war, and it's a long story, but in a time when men never got the custody, he got custody of me, provided that his parents, my grandparents, would be the legal guardians.
And they raised you.
And they raised me.
But Bill was a Republican, and he was a different religion, all kinds of things.
All the things that you're supposed to avoid.
It didn't make any difference.
Right. So just to kind of recap, so you had your first date of 5 months into two people suggesting, or Marvin suggesting, back around New Year's, you got to meet this woman. I think you guys would both hit it off. You postponed it for 5 months. In May, you finally had your first date at Busch Garden as a group date. It went well, and then later Bill followed up. He's like,
That same week,
like, hey, can I meet you close to where you're at? It was a brief kind of conversation.
He asked if we could meet on Friday.
Yeah, so it's the kind of third date in a way was
Judy Collins
the Judy concert. So I'm curious the progression, because by that third date or third interaction, you both were like, this feels like it.
Yeah.
This is like both of you got the idea.
Yeah, we just got along. We had even though we were so different, we had so much in common.
So when you guys did have that conversation, how did that go when both of you guys proposed, like, do you want to get married? Like, what happened at that point?
We don't know.
We can't remember.
But we know one thing. We got married on Thursday, August 6th.
Okay.
Oh,
That
no.
was 2 months later.
2 months later.
We waited 2
But
months.
we had-
I came home and I told my dad. He said, well, I just remember him telling me, well, do I get to meet him before you get married?
Yeah, so that was a very quick decision. You guys both committed that Friday kind of third interaction, third date.
Yeah.
You both committed, no, we're serious. We are going to go through with this. And then it took you about 2 months to maybe plan
the wedding. We just told everybody we're getting married next. It was a Wednesday. We decided a couple of days, we're getting married next Wednesday.
Okay, you made an executive decision. Was it kind of like a formal wedding, or did you still invite people over, or did you elope?
We had our closest friends and family.
About 30 people.
Okay.
We put together a little wedding.
Okay, so again, you by the third date, you knew that you were going to get married. 2 months later, you were planning.
We started planning it right away.
Yeah, but 2 months later, you got married, and it was kind of like, okay, we're just kind of exasperated of
Yeah, we didn't
from
wanna
planning, we're just going to do it. Then, and by the way, was this unusual? Like, are people back then, did they make these kind of quick decisions on getting married?
We didn't know of anybody, I don't think, did we?
Okay.
No, but all my friends were getting married and getting engaged. Yeah, so everybody was getting married.
How did your families react to this quick decision? Were they supportive of it? Were they reluctant?
My mother had died just a couple years before. Mm-hmm. And my dad, there were 4 of us children. Mm-hmm. And he was overwhelmed. And it was just like, just tell me what to do.
Okay.
He didn't, I'll do it. Just tell me when.
So he rolled with it. He didn't put up any barriers or roadblocks.
And yours did somewhat.
Yeah, they did a little bit. But my uncle, who was really more like my dad, we were so close together, and he said, what you ought to do is probably try to find a neutral religion that you can both go for. So we did Episcopal, which is...
Well, that was later on.
No, but because we wanted it for the kids. When we had kids, we wanted them to get a religious background.
So what factors of compatibility when you first, on that third date?
Communication, and that's what it's been through our whole life.
Okay.
We talk. and we talk things out, and we resolve things, and we never go to bed angry.
Yeah, that was a rule we made.
Never go to bed.
And I think it's an extremely valuable one because those things just heat up. Neither of you sleep well that night. It's just going over in your head, and then you start off the next day that way. And one event isn't one thing, but as they build up over time, it can be pretty...
And there are people who say, I just need space to process my feelings when conflicts do come up, for example. And for some people, space might be a few days, maybe even a week, maybe however long it takes them to process things. So even when conflicts come up, with the principle of don't go to bed angry, it's addressing things in the moment so that you can both move on fairly quickly and not have that linger over your relationship, it sounds like.
Right, very good.
Yeah.
But also, I admired things in Bill that I didn't have myself, his creativity. Okay. He loved writing poems, writing things. He was very, very prolific that way. Oh. And I don't have an artistic bone in my body.
So he had a talent that you admired.
Yes.
And it sounds like you were in touch with your feelings through your poetry in a way.
Yeah, I found that as a good way to express myself. And it stopped a lot of the things where I just had kind of no outlet for them before that.
One of the things he wanted to do, and it really appealed to me, was sail around the world.
So there was a sense of adventure.
Absolutely.
His future plans.
I wanted to travel. I had signed up for the Peace Corps when I met Bill. I was going to Thailand, all ready to go and everything. All those dreams went behind because he had other dreams that opened up the same types of things. Okay,
so you still accomplished what you wanted to do in a sense,
in a
different way.
Yes.
You did it with a partner, and you kind of created new goals with each other in mind.
And since then, we've done so much traveling, I can't even tell.
Okay, so and you got that sense from that conversation that Friday that he was adventurous, that he
was creative,
that you really liked.
He was totally different than me, and I was totally different than him. I was very pragmatic and goal oriented, and Bill,
So, Bill, how about you? What kind of compatibility factors did Marybeth have that really intrigued you, that made you feel comfortable choosing her?
No, I just think that it was such a close relationship that it didn't feel like a situation where, oh God, I've got to make a decision, and do I want this, or one of us was pressuring the other one, or anything like that. It just sort of fell together, and. The thing that I think sealed the deal was she had spent the night at my apartment, and we were driving. We were both driving to work.
This was the best part.
Yeah, and so she came to a stop sign, and on a signal,
Boulevard.
and I stopped right behind her, and I suddenly, impulsively, got out of the car and ran up and kissed her.
In the car, and all the horns were honking and everything.
It was just, I don't know, it was such
an extravagant
he was a romantic.
But that's when we knew that we just had this thing.
It was,
and there was one other thing I need to tell you, because I spent the night over at her place. on a Sunday morning, there was a knock at the door, and it was David. Yes. And he said, he was shocked to see me there, and he says, "Is Marybeth here?" And I said, "Yes, and she doesn't want to see you," and slammed the door in his face.
David is the Jewish guy that you're dating. Interesting. So you
From then on, he followed me wherever I worked and got a job. You'd call it stalking. David did.
David. So he didn't like losing you. He still wanted you in his grasp.
Sort of mild stalking. It wasn't.
No, not really.
But
we didn't call it.
But Bill, you stood up and you were like, "Nope, she's mine."
Yeah, no, I just and I was even surprised at myself that I was that.
That probably was probably attractive to you.
Oh yeah, he was very romantic. Let's put it that way. And David was not. I mean, it was such an eye opener for me.
Well, also it sounds like Bill. It sounds like you gave her the assurance that you were choosing her versus
me going after David.
David was the one who was kind of wanting to be chased in a way.
Well, yeah, he just didn't know.
Maybe not chased, but
he had a sad background. His father had died, and they were very poor. And he got a scholarship to UCLA, and he had to work in the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
And he was more goal oriented. To get through school and what he was going to do. He just wanted to make money.
So he was more focused on himself.
Very.
Not so much building a relationship.
And through a long roundabout thing, he became a doctor.
Yes, and even recently, before we moved here, he tried to contact me.
Oh, really? After all these decades, he tried to reach out?
And he's been married to somebody else, and I loved her. It was his best friend's wife. His best friend was horrible. I hated his best friend.
He married his best friend's wife.
Ex-wife,
yes.
yeah.
Ex-wife. Okay.
And she was lovely. She was so nice. I liked her a lot. And we'd socialize. I did not like him, but, I liked her.
Okay.
And he said he made a mistake. He married a used wife.
What?
Yeah.
I've never heard
He
that
called
before.
his wife
that she was a used
wife.
Interesting. Wow, this guy
I've
sounds really unhealthy.
I don't know
mentally.
what she thought that he thought that she was because.
But anyhow, they're still
we were married.
together.
Okay, but he's
And then he's had children with her.
but he thinks about her as a used wife. Well, I definitely think you leveled up. It sounds like.
Oh my God!
Like it sounds like you missed a bullet, kind of a thing. Like with him, it would have. He just kind of is judgmental of women or doesn't appreciate them. He didn't appreciate you, certainly.
No, and all my friends kept trying to tell me that. I guess I was just not. Going to a girls' school, I didn't date much at all in high school.
So you didn't have much experience.
But I just followed him in everything. I'd go to all the classes. I'd feed him all the answers to everything.
This was who?
David.
David. Okay, so
we had all the same classes: French, psychology.
So you were kind of overdoing it in the relationship to win his favor. So it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of attachment theory, which is a psychology of relationships, kind of a framework. I've been doing a lot of research on that over the last few years, and this is a very common dynamic a lot of women and men fall into. They call it an anxious avoidant trap. So it sounds like he could have had an avoidant type of attachment, which is someone who prefers to be distanced, who likes to keep their options open, wants their freedom, focuses on their own success themselves, is a little selfish. And then they attract women who, and it doesn't always have to be in that order, like the man is avoidant and the woman is anxious, but they attract women who have a little bit of an anxious quality where I just want to keep him in my life. I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to lose him. I'm going to overwork to please him and show him, no, I'm a good one. Please keep me. So you gave him answers. You helped him with his coursework. You were always there for him. You gave him so many chances, more than you should have probably.
Oh, yeah.
And you were always kind of in that position, almost like the chaser while he was the taker. Like you were the giver and he was the taker.
If I wouldn't call him, he'd always call me.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's just that he also didn't want to lose you as the option, is why he would still keep you interested just enough, almost like breadcrumbing. Interested just enough to keep her around, but still have his freedom to see other women as he chose, as he pleased.
Oh, yeah.
And come back into your life whenever it was convenient for him. Like he showed up that morning after you had spent the evening with Bill. He showed up just expecting you to be available for him because it just struck his mood to see you. So I'm happy that you left that what would have been a bad relationship, and it showed later on when he did get married. He also probably mistreated his wife and look down on his wife, thinking, he's superior, he's better, he could do better. Those are kind of qualities of people who tend to have an avoidant attachment style. So I know that's a little bit of a tangent, but if you recognize, for anyone listening, if you recognize these little cues in the person that you're dating, do some more research on it and realize, like,
luckily my friends did.
Yeah, it sounds like you had friends that were looking out for you that just intuitively knew this person is not an emotionally healthy partner. And instead you found someone who was emotionally available to you, Bill, who put in the effort, who showed, I like you. Look, I'm doing
And I love being treated that way.
Yeah, as all people should. People should feel like they're treated well in a relationship and appreciated is what it sounds like he made you feel. So this is good stuff.
Well, there was one other thing, too, that this really comes into to relationships and relying on one another, not one person making the decisions.
And we were able to purchase a house. I bought it when Bill was away on a business trip.
She did call me.
I did call him because we've been looking for houses. Anyhow, it was in a very exclusive neighborhood.
Yeah, Bel Air's nice.
Just right inside the gates up from UCLA.
Okay, yeah.
And I bought this house for $69,000.
Oh my gosh, what year was this?
It was in 1972. I knew it was worthwhile. And so I called Bill and we purchased it.
Wow, good job. All right, so you had a house that you purchased together. So kind of on that topic of making decisions together, what is a challenge in your relationship? How did you come together to resolve that issue?
One of the things I remember was when our kids moved back here, our daughter met and married someone.
Yeah. And you've had 2 kids, or how many
Two
kids?
We have a son first, and then we have a daughter.
Okay, got it.
And when they moved back here, it was a big decision.
Minnesota.
To Minnesota. Mm-hmm. We'd come back here every couple months to see,
from California to Minnesota.
From California. And that was somewhat of a challenge, because then we bought a house in a wonderful part of San Francisco area. And
wait, so your daughter had already moved here, and then you to Minnesota, and then you bought a house in San Francisco?
No. We had the house.
Our daughter, our kids were raised in the East Bay of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
In Orinda.
Got it. So you were kind of going back and forth from North Cal to Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah. And it was just a decision, continue to work at UC Berkeley and Bill by that time had his own business at home. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had quit my other.
So that was hard when Bill went through that, when he quit his other job, and I, but we've never really had any, have we? No.
There was. I was trying to think though on that move though, when we really wanted to come back here, and this is a very rough thing is here when you're in San Francisco and you tell people you're moving to Minneapolis, they say, "Why in the hell are you doing that?"
Yes, even once you get here, people are like, "Why did you come here?"
Yeah, that's what they did because they all loved San Francisco at that time.
So again, we were on the same page.
Yeah.
But I was supportive, of his dreams, and he was always supportive of mine. So it was like no big, huge arguments.
Because I'm sure there might be people listening to this who are like, we're in that spot right now, myself and my boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse, where something is happening in their career where either they're being promoted or they have a new opportunity to move somewhere, or maybe they have a family motive for needing to move out of state. And I'm sure that's a tough conversation for a lot of people to have because it affects the other person. It affects the continuity of your relationship together. Mm-hmm. If you've built a life somewhere together. Were there any challenges in those initial conversations around planning? How do we do this? Was there any reservation from either of you around the move or around one person giving up their job? Or was it like, sure, do what you want to do.
We were
both
looking for adventure.
Okay.
Anything, right?
Yeah.
We wanted new opportunities, new adventure.
Originally, when we got married, we wanted to live in San Francisco.
So this is interesting. If you align early on with someone who just has the same, like a few clear values that are also high priority values to you, it makes these other conflicts a little easier. If both of you highly valued adventure and new experiences, and ultimately had a future plan of ending up in Northern California at some
Always
point.
wanted from the time we got married.
So that was already, those were compatibility factors that didn't need negotiation, and they were very important to both of you. So when these life moments came up of, hey, someone's changing a job and someone wants to move, you look at it from the frame point of, is this a new adventure? Yeah. And do we love adventures? We do. So no conflict here. Let's move forward. And when you're clear on what your key priorities are or compatibility factors are early on, it makes the selection of a partner a bit easier, because it probably in that first conversation, I still think back to the Friday, that momentous Friday when all was decided. Your future was really decided, like on a Friday night on like a third date. So would you say that you had clarity about what you both kind of wanted for yourselves or your goals for your lives, or what you
we were very
from
because we communicated so well. I mean, we could tell whose dreams at that point were the more important.
Yeah.
Okay. So throughout your relationship, you kind of gave and take. Like some points in this relationship, we're going to prioritize Bill's goals and dreams.
Yeah,
and so you supported his career move to Northern California.
Yes.
And Bill, can you give us
to Reno,
sorry,
and then to California,
and then to San Francisco from Reno. And Bill, can you give us an example of a time when she had a goal that you were like, okay, this is a season where now I support my wife with her goal?
It never did, because it was the principal. I was the principal breadwinner. But
by then,
but the thing that I think was that I encouraged her in her volunteering, and I think the volunteering was one of the greatest things. She ended up getting a job at UC because she was volunteering and they knew her. But I think she was not the person that would be the stay-at-home housewife and enjoy it. She wanted to get out, and particularly it gets tough once the kids start going to school. Well, what do I do with my day now?
I was so busy. My kids thought I had a job, I think.
You're so busy, your kids thought you had a job. So it sounds like you were aware of what her passions were and you supported her passions at least.
Yes.
And
he always did.
Yeah. And one of your passions was volunteering, so he encouraged that and encouraged
But then when I wanted to learn bridge, you learned bridge.
Okay. So he gets involved in your passions with you.
And I didn't learn to play golf.
Okay.
Just as well. I wasn't that good a golfer.
Okay.
But we love travel, and that is what we continued to do. Okay. Travel. And we still took trips just by ourselves without our kids a lot.
Did you experience, on the topic of travel, did you find that these experiences traveling internationally together tested your relationship in any way? Or was that strengthened your relationship?
Yeah, he's a great driver and I'm a great navigator.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have that's the thing, we had complementary skills.
Okay, so where you were kind of lacking in some areas, he had strengths and vice versa?
That's what I think we've noticed, I mean, even now, even more so, that
Who says?
that, like right now, he takes care of all the investments and stuff that I know nothing about. And he wouldn't know how to pay a bill in his life. In fact, when we met and right before we got married, I opened drawers in his place in Venice, and there were bills that were unpaid. So we have complementary talents, is what I'm saying.
So it sounds like, for example, one area is that you're more of like a bookkeeper or good at keeping up with budgets, what needs to be done. And Bill, you're more of an investor mentality.
Well, that's what he did in college, his career,
it was
everything.
A passion.
And he still does it.
As much as I've done that in investments, when it comes to real estate and everything, I've always trusted her judgment on it, because she really gets into it and she looks at all the different factors and stuff like that. I like something that I can get a quick reward by, okay, we're going to go buy that stock and it goes up, or bonds. That's what bonds were really what my career was in. But.
Nice, very interesting.
So I think that's what it is. We have complementary talents.
That's really good. Thinking about, almost like ways that you make each other's lives easier. Like you bring skills to the table that eases some things that she doesn't want to take care of, And you too, Marybeth, there are some things that he probably doesn't find much joy in, like keeping track of bills or other things like that, or looking up real estate investments or whatever. So you make his life easier in that regard and kind of handling that.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, things like getting him involved, because he'd be home early in the afternoon when we lived in San Francisco, and he'd be there at 5 a.m. at work. I'd find all these opportunities, like you coached all kinds of games for our kids.
Yeah, that was one of the nice things. I didn't have to be at work if I had to leave, but I had to be there before the markets opened in New York.
Yeah.
So that was 6 o'clock that I had to be there. Actually,
Earlier from that.
6:30. Actually, I had to be there. Yeah, and so there was, by that, then I'd come home at the end later in the afternoon, and then you got afternoon. So the coaching fit perfect for me on that, and so I think.
Coaching
our kids' sports.
Soccer,
Oh, you start
baseball.
coaching kids' sports, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that it was I wasn't the best coach, but I think I was helpful to the kids because I didn't get into this thing like where these fathers that all they care about is winning, and I didn't want to teach them that. I wanted to teach them to enjoy the game and everything else, and so it worked.
So maybe they weren't champions, but they enjoyed themselves.
Yes.
So you were focused on the experience for the kids, not the
So
end
I'd
result.
get them involved in all these extracurricular activities. When we lived in Reno, the only
Keep them
way
busy.
Yeah. When we lived in Reno, the only way to get into society there was to learn bridge.
Okay.
And I found that out and got you involved, and you loved it.
Well, and then the junior league too up there was.
So would you say that she's like more social than you, Bill, or
No.
You're more social.
We're both.
She's pointing to Bill as
We're
the more
both
social.
really social.
Okay.
But I love to. My favorite thing is to stay upstairs and read.
Okay.
Read books. I love books.
Okay.
I mean, I started working in libraries when I was 16.
Okay.
And Bill, but we're both really social. Maybe that's it too. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that was an area of compatibility that you naturally sensed. You
Yeah.
both have a love of connecting with people. And
But
We really did.
and I think the thing in retirement too is you got to get yourself involved in something. And so like now, just managing my own investments, which I've done well in, has been one
But
thing.
he's got another passion.
But wine.
He knows so many winemakers all over the world.
We have had some wonderful experiences in that, both in Europe and here.
And yet, I'm not really that much into wine, but I support it. I mean,
Okay, this is valuable. Even if you don't, for anyone listening, even if you're a husband or a wife and you don't quite fully understand or are gung-ho about someone's passion, you see that it makes them happy, so you support it because you support them being happy.
oh yeah,
Well, and she was able to combine her love of travel
with the wine.
with me, and me with the wine, so that we did this, and so we got to go to all these out-of-the-way places that you wouldn't normally.
But by the way, I wanted to do a
Yes.
little disclaimer
Yes.
that sometimes if their passion is unhealthy for the person, probably don't support it. Like if their passion is
And
like
we've had that happen too.
overeating or drugs or going to parties every night, maybe that's not the passion to support. But if it's like a healthy passion and you see that...
too, wine, if I got to the point, I mean, sometimes I'll go a few days without having wine. It doesn't bother me. It's not, but
Merrill Lynch, the culture at Merrill Lynch at those days,
Sexist.
anti-sexist and drinking. I mean, and I was opposed to that. And I finally got you a breathalyzer.
I will tell you one thing that was interesting. When a guy had a birthday there, they'd use one of the conference rooms at Merrill Lynch and bring in a stripper.
Okay.
Now, we had sales assistants and all these that were women in there. So But the only reason that I ever figured out that the women put up with it was they couldn't make as much money anywhere else as what they were making there. But they had to witness all this stuff and hear these guys talking, and sometimes the way that they and I didn't like that either. I was never big on that thing,
But they'd have lots of after-work parties, and one time I had to call one of my friends to come and stay with our kids.
Oh, God.
So I could go into the city and pick him up because he was so wasted. The bar called me.
Wow.
And told me to come get him.
Well, I told him because I knew I couldn't drive.
So how did that kind of a wild career phase or wild corporation that you worked at, Bill. Did that affect your marriage in any way? It sounds like no.
No, but what
because we agreed on.
But I also realized that culture was not something I liked, so I used that as the stepping stone to become an investment advisor.
See,
and that's a totally different thing.
All right, so a last question is, what are some maybe 2-3 key factors to success in your lasting 50-year marriage? You've mentioned don't go to bed angry. Make sure that you resolve your issues quickly when they do arise.
Communication.
And what aspect of communication? Because that's kind of a broad term.
Well, we're just always talking to each other.
So don't give each other the silent treatment. Don't
don't make a decision on your own either without
we always
discussing
consult each other.
So consulting your partner when it comes to all the decisions, minor decisions, major decisions, all of it.
No, just major decisions. Small stuff we don't.
We always let each other know what we're doing.
But if it was even like buying a car or
he was a caraholic.
Not anymore.
We had so many cars, but
ago.
the other thing is our kids. I mean, once we had kids, our lives really started revolving
around the kids.
Yeah.
Both of your lives.
Yeah.
They became the new
and they
priority.
still are, and that's why we're here.
Okay, so if I can recall them, don't go to bed angry, communicate, like have open dialogue with each other and frequent dialogue with each other, make major decisions together as a team.
And support each other's dreams.
Support each other's dreams and passions and happiness. Even if you don't necessarily understand it or enjoy doing it yourself, just try to be supportive because it makes them happy. Any other tips that you would...
I'll give you 2 rules of success. 1, the woman is always right. And rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. No, that's a play on something. It's a commercial on
but you feel like that's helped you, Bill?
Well, no, I mean, I think so.
He came from a matriarchal family, believe me. He does.
It's easier to talk about it before than to afterwards have a fight about it.
Well, what do you mean? It's easier to talk about
Well, making a decision. So we feel on any major decision of spending a lot of money. I mean, I could go out and spend $100 or $200 on wine. That's
10
one
times
thing.
a week.
But I would never go out and buy a car without consulting her. Well, I think it's just common mutual respect.
Common courtesy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's ahead of his times as far as being,
Well, I just saw
equality
too much
for everybody.
I think that helped with my mother and seeing her being married all those times and everything, and what it put the kids through and all the other stuff, and then also the fact that my dad was fairly distant. Fortunately, I had an uncle that I was really close to.
So is he kind of your male role model for relationships?
My uncle was.
Your uncle?
For both of us, I think.
Really?
Oh, we loved him. We brought him back here to live with us.
Oh my God, that's great. Because I am kind of curious because they do say that sometimes the parental environment or caregiver environment you have as a child really does influence your future relationships. So it sounds like you, Bill, earlier on, you had kind of like, there are a lot of different characters that probably came into your life as a child because your mom had so many different relationships.
Oh, he didn't even have a relationship.
But I didn't do it.
With his
She
mom.
would come and visit. I think I could count on both hands the number of times that I saw her.
Oh, you
while I
didn't
was
see
growing
her?
up.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. So you were mostly raised by your dad?
No, by the grandparents.
By my grandparents.
Grandparents. And what was the relationship of your grandparents? Was it a very healthy relationship? Was it a loving relationship?
Domineering by her.
But it was a loving relationship. They were married
very loving.
over 50 years,
Okay.
which that was pretty good in those days, and particularly, with aging. But my grandmother, but I think in a way they did split things. My grandfather did the work and made the money, and actually they did decide
she
between
worked
them.
Too.
Oh yeah, she owned her own beauty parlor and had it was a good sized one and very popular.
Did you?
Okay, so how would you describe the dynamic then of your early childhood relationships with your grandparents? Do you think like you model that in your own relationship
Your
to this day?
grandfather.
I loved my grandfather and I loved my grandmother, but as I got older, then I wanted to be more away from that.
So did you look to them, their relationship, as something you wanted to model or something you wanted to do the opposite of?
I never really thought too much of, about it.
So you kind of tried to move away from that. What about you, Marybeth? Did you have modeled to you a relationship that you were like, I wanted
My mother.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
my
what
mother
was that
fabulous.
dynamic between your mom and your dad?
I think my mother kind of ran the ship.
Okay.
But she didn't work, and she was very supportive of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And they met when they were almost 40, and then had 4 kids in 5 years.
At 40 they met, and
They met in the military.
Almost
They were
40,
both in the
late
military,
30s.
right?
Yeah. My mother was in the Navy, waves, and my father was in the Army.
Okay.
And my father was in the China-Burma India theater.
Okay.
And they met both working in the post office at Lompoc, California.
Okay, and so in their early 40s they had 4
kids in 5 years.
4 kids in 5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and this was before other kind of like medical assistance that people have nowadays with...
Oh, my mother did have nurses.
no, I mean, I'm talking about like in vitro fertilization and all those other modern day things.
Because I was born when she was 38.
Okay.
So it was late 30s.
Yeah.
They didn't get married till she was 37.
Okay.
And I think he was too.
Okay. And then did they have, would you say, a loving relationship, a good relationship?
Oh, yes. My mom was very supportive of my dad. There were things that happened that my dad could be led into anything.
Yeah, okay.
And my mother was very smart and very, but it was the relationship. She knew everybody, and everybody loved my mother. Because she'd do anything for anybody.
Okay.
And she was president of organizations, and she was just so outgoing and so, and then my mother died at 56.
Oh, sorry.
So, and my father kind of let the family down afterwards, which is sad. He was just kind of weak, and he got roped into 2 more marriages.
And he was lonely too. So.
Yeah, he was lonely. So, anyhow,
Are there-
but she supported him. I mean, no doubt about it.
Did he support her as well?
Yeah, he was just there.
Okay.
I mean.
So did you think about her in your own marriage? Like, she was such a supportive mother and wife. I want to be the same.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And plus, she was just so lovable. And she...
Well-liked.
Well-liked,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I remember at her funeral, hundreds and hundreds of people.
And she touched a lot of people's lives.
She really did. And even people that were mean and ornery, she would still go and help them and, take care of them. And
Okay, so she had a caretaking instinct.
oh, really?
Yeah.
And she was a wonderful mother.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting the differences of where you both came from when it comes to like your childhoods were very different. You had 2 parents, Marybeth, that were together. It seems like it was a loving. And then Bill, you had quite a different background than her, where it was more just a lot more change that you had to experience as a kid, probably with the different people, and also being shifted over to your dad's custody, but then your grandparents raised you, and your mother kind of having a variety of different people that she was involved with. So, but the outcome is still that you guys have been together for over 50 years. So this just kind of gives people hope, I think, that even if they didn't come from the perfect family, you could end up like Bill in a 50-plus year marriage that, if you know what kind of a person you want to be, and it sounded like, Bill, at least you learned what you didn't want to be in some cases from observing what you did in your childhood, and you just made choices that were healthier in your relationship. So knowing who you want to show up as and what kind of partner you want to be in a relationship can aid your success regardless of where your early beginnings started. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing these beautiful stories about your background, how you met, the interesting story of how quickly you got married, and some of the things that made you feel certain that this is the person for me, the compatibility factors. We also talked a little bit about just supporting one another and the different keys to success in your own personal marriage that I think will be great to reinforce for the listeners too, and to carry on in their relationships. So Thank you both for being so open and honest and for sharing your life and everything. So I really appreciate you.
Well, it was a good experience, too, because I think it brought up a lot of things that were good memories of us and things to keep in mind.
Yeah.
I think people forget about a lot of that, and then they grow apart.
Yeah. We're always... We do everything together still.
That's so sweet.
Isn't that funny?
So you still enjoy each other's company to this day?
Oh, yeah.
As we wrap up another episode of Connection Artist, I want to express my gratitude to you for listening and exploring how we can all grow and better connect with one another. I created this podcast to support your relationship success and happiness. If you found value in this episode, here's how you can support me and help spread the word about this podcast. First, subscribe to this podcast and share it with 10 friends. If you share this education with 10 people and they share it with 10 people and so on, we can grow this movement of creating a more loving and caring world. If you'd like to show your support on a personal level, visit www.analuca.com. That's ANALUCA. Explore my heart-centric products and education, from poetry books to online courses, art prints to apparel. Every purchase directly enables me to continue producing episodes and sharing these valuable stories and insights with you, because this podcast is not free to create. Please consider buying something I've made with my heart and soul to connect with you. Discover handmade heart-shaped art prints and hoodies featuring my exclusive Crypto Love Drops collection at www.artbyanaluca.com. Read about the inspiration behind these beautiful heart artworks at cryptolovedrops.com. These make really great, unique gifts for your friends, family, and spouse, and serve as a lasting symbolic reminder of your love for them. Or if you enjoy journaling or you'd like to start, get my 15-minute daily guided journal for confident mindset titled Yes, I Can. If you want more stories, buy my poetry book, The People We Meet, available on Amazon or directly on my website, artbyanaluca.com. Just click on the books tab. Listen to my music album called Reprise on Spotify. Fun fact, the opening music track that you heard on this podcast is actually composed by me and is featured in my music album. If you want to learn how to strengthen your self-worth, get my digital ebook called Well Valued, which features a 30-day blueprint for building self-worth. Or if you're single and want to learn how to assess and find your most compatible dating partner using AI, get my digital course called Well Matched. These products are all designed to strengthen your self-worth and relationships and are all linked in my website, www.analuca.com. Also, don't forget to check out my hand-illustrated apparel line at www.laughstoself.com. I hand-designed really funny, cute illustrations that made me laugh, but also serve the purpose of spreading humor, love, and connection with others. That apparel line of hoodies, t-shirts, and sweaters are exclusively available only on my website, so if you want to wear something unique, check out laughstoself.com. Connect with me on social media for podcast and life updates. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Ana Luca Official. And lastly, if you're based in the United States and would like to be interviewed on the podcast, send me a message at myconnectionartist@gmail.com to potentially join me as a guest on this show in the future. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot in reaching more listeners like you who can benefit from this information. Thank you for being a part of this Connection Artist community. I'm wishing you so much love and happiness in your relationships. Stay tuned for the next episode.